The princess no one wanted. Princess Seraphina stood by the window, staring out at the vastness of her empire. The stars twinkled above, so far away yet so close. The Zoran Empire, a powerful and ancient civilization, stretched across the galaxy, but for all its glory, it felt empty to her. She was the last in a line of royal blood, yet she carried the weight of a curse that no one could understand. She was infertile. The one thing the empire valued most, its heirs, she could not provide. Her life had been a series of quiet whispers behind closed doors, pitying looks from her family, and silent rejection from her people. To them, she was nothing more than a burden. A princess with no future. Seraphina had been told from the moment she was old enough to understand that she was never meant to be a queen. Her parents, though kind, had often looked at her with sad eyes, knowing that they couldn't change the truth. And her people, the Zoran people, had made it clear with every passing year that a ruler who couldn't produce heirs was a failure. She had spent most of her days in the palace, far from the public eye, trying to avoid the whispers and the stares. Sometimes, when she couldn't take the isolation any longer, she would slip into the gardens, where the flowers bloomed brightly despite the sadness she felt inside. There, the colors of the petals seemed to mock her, so full of life, so full of possibility, but none of that was for her. Seraphina's heart ached with the loneliness of it all. She was a prisoner, not of her palace walls, but of the expectations that everyone had for her. She could do nothing right in their eyes. Her value was tied to her ability to give birth to heirs, and that was something she could never do. Today, though, felt different. There was a strange energy in the air, a shift she couldn't explain. The palace felt colder than usual, and the servants seemed to move more quickly, whispering among themselves. The princess knew something was coming. Something important. She was called to the council hall, a place she had only visited on rare occasions. The high-ranking officials of the empire sat in their usual seats, their faces grim, their eyes cold. They didn't look at her with love or respect. They looked at her as if she were already gone, already forgotten. Her heart sank. She knew what this was. Princess Seraphina, the High Chancellor, spoke with a voice that echoed through the large hall. It has come to our attention that the Zoran Empire needs a new heir. The future of the empire is uncertain without one. She didn't need to hear the rest. She had heard it all before. Her future had already been decided for her. She wasn't going to marry. She wasn't going to lead. She wasn't going to be anything more than a forgotten figure in the shadows of the empire's history. The council members shifted in their seats, their eyes not on her, but on the new man who had entered the room. Seraphina's heart skipped a beat as she turned to face him. He was a soldier, wearing the uniform of Earth's military, a human, from a distant planet. He was unlike anyone she had ever seen. His tall frame and strong posture commanded attention. His dark eyes met hers, and for a moment, the room seemed to disappear. He walked toward her without hesitation, his boots clicking against the floor. The council members looked on, bewildered by his presence. The High Chancellor spoke again, his voice tight with confusion. "Who are you? You are not part of the Zoran Empire." "I am Captain Adam Stone," the man said, his voice firm and unwavering. "And I have come for Princess Seraphina." The room fell silent. No one knew what to say. Seraphina's eyes widened as the man continued, stepping closer to her, ignoring the puzzled gazes of the council. "I choose her," Captain Stone said, his voice steady. "Not for her bloodline, not for her ability to bear heirs. But for who she is. Princess Seraphina, I choose you." A gasp rippled through the room. Seraphina's heart raced in her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had ever chosen her for anything other than what she couldn't provide. But this man, this soldier, he wasn't looking at her as a failure. He saw something in her that no one else had seen. Seraphina couldn't believe what was happening. A human soldier, standing in the heart of the Zoran Empire, had just claimed her as his own. The council, stunned and speechless, could do nothing but watch as the man who had nothing to do with her world made the boldest statement of her life. In that moment, Seraphina realized that her life might not be over after all. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for her yet. The rejection of her own people. Princess Seraphina couldn't believe what she had just heard. The room was still filled with the heavy silence of disbelief as Captain Adam Stone stood before her. His eyes, full of confidence, met hers, and for the first time in years, she felt seen. But the Zoran Council, they were not pleased. The High Chancellor, his face pale with anger, slammed his fist on the table. "You dare to defy the Zoran Empire's traditions, Earthling?" His voice was sharp, laced with contempt. "This is absurd. A human marrying our princess, who cannot even fulfill her duty to our people. Have you lost your mind?" Captain Stone did not flinch. His posture remained firm, resolute. He was not afraid of the Council's power, not afraid of the Empire's rules. All he saw was Seraphina, no longer just a princess, but a woman trapped in a system that had failed her. "I choose her," Captain Stone repeated, his voice steady and unyielding. "She deserves more than to be cast aside for something she cannot control. The Empire has failed her, but I will not." Seraphina's heart raced. She had never imagined that anyone, let alone a human soldier from a faraway world, would stand up for her. To the Zoran Council, she was an outcast, a princess who couldn't bear children, and thus, unworthy of their respect. Yet this man, who knew nothing of their traditions, saw something different. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of disbelief and scorn. The Chancellor sneered. "You think you can change everything? Our people will never accept such a union. You cannot erase centuries of tradition with one word." Captain Stone took a step forward, his eyes locked on the Chancellor. "I'm not here to erase your traditions," he said calmly. "I'm here to give Princess Seraphina a chance at happiness, a chance to be seen as more than just an object for political gain." Seraphina's chest tightened. It wasn't just about love, it was about her place in a world that had rejected her. Her entire life had been shaped by the expectations of others. Her worth had been defined by her ability to produce heirs, something she had no control over. But here, standing in front of her, was a man who saw her for who she truly was. A woman. A person. Not a title or a failed legacy. The room buzzed with tense whispers. Some of the council members were clearly disturbed, but a few, Seraphina noticed, looked uncertain. They were too proud to admit it, but they were already questioning their long-held beliefs. If a human soldier could stand up for her, maybe there was something more to her than they had believed. One of the elder women of the council, who had always been the harshest in her judgment of Seraphina, stood up slowly. Her long silver hair framed her weathered face, and her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of generations. "This is not just about the princess," she said quietly, but with authority. "This is about the future of our empire. If we allow such a union, it could weaken us, make us vulnerable. What will the other worlds think? What will our allies say?" Captain Stone met the woman's gaze, unbothered by her criticism. "You fear what you don't understand," he replied, his words cutting through the tension. "But this is a chance to show that the Zoran Empire is more than its bloodline. You can either continue to cling to outdated traditions, or you can evolve. Choose wisely." The room fell silent again, and Seraphina could feel the weight of every eye on her. Her thoughts swirled. Was this really happening? Was she truly being given a chance to make her own choice, to decide her own future, for the first time in her life? The High Chancellor scowled, his patience thinning. "Enough," he said, his voice growing cold. "We cannot entertain this nonsense any longer. The princess's marriage, or lack of one, is not up for discussion. She will remain here, in her place, and the empire will move forward." But before anyone could react, Seraphina spoke. Her voice was soft at first, hesitant, but then, with growing confidence, it became louder and clearer. No. The room went completely still. The High Chancellor looked at her as if she had lost her mind. What did you say? I said no, Serafina repeated, her voice unwavering. She turned to Captain Stone, and for the first time, she saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He was waiting for her. I choose this, she said, looking back at the council. I choose a future of my own. A future where I'm not defined by what I cannot do. The room erupted in shock, murmurs of disbelief spreading like wildfire. Some of the council members seemed outraged, but others, Serafina noticed, were quietly nodding. For the first time, they were unsure, uncertain of the path they had followed for so long. Princess, you are making a grave mistake, the Chancellor warned, but Serafina stood tall, her gaze steady. I don't think so, she said, her voice calm but firm. Maybe it's time for the Empire to make a change. And it starts with me. An unexpected alliance. The days following Serafina's bold declaration felt like a blur. The palace, once filled with the hum of whispered judgments, now buzzed with the sound of defiance. Her decision had shattered the centuries-old expectations of the Zoran Empire, and the council, despite their protests, could do nothing to stop her. But the world outside the palace walls was not so easy to win over. Serafina knew that the hardest battle was yet to come. The council might have been silent for now, but her choice had ignited a storm. The Empire's citizens, her own people, were not so easily swayed. To them, her infertility was a symbol of failure, a deep flaw in the very foundation of their lineage. They didn't care about her heart, her dreams, or her desire to rule. They only cared about the next heir. The whispers of the Empire were crueler now. Rumors spread like wildfire, each one more damaging than the last. Princess Serafina chooses a human soldier over her own people, they said. She is willing to betray her bloodline for an outsider. Serafina had heard it all. But it was Captain Stone's presence that kept her grounded. Adam Stone, the human soldier who had once been a stranger, was now her ally. He had proven himself in a way no one else ever had, by choosing her, not for what she could give, but for who she was. And that was something she could never turn away from. She walked through the halls of the palace, her steps echoing against the marble floors, her mind heavy with the weight of the future. The air was thick with tension. She could hear the voices of her servants, who spoke in hushed tones, but they fell silent as soon as she entered the room. Adam was there, waiting for her. He was dressed in his military uniform, a symbol of his rank and his roots on earth. But to Serafina, his uniform was a symbol of the choice he had made. He was no longer just a soldier. He was her protector, her equal, her partner. Your Highness, Adam said, standing as she entered. There was a sense of calm in his voice, an assurance that Serafina didn't fully understand but deeply appreciated. We need to talk about what's next. Serafina nodded, her heart pounding. I know. The Empire will not simply accept this. We've already seen how they feel about our union. Adam's expression softened. You're not alone in this, Serafina. I'm not leaving you. We'll figure this out together. The words, simple as they were, meant everything to her. In a world where she had always been expected to be something she wasn't, Adam's unwavering support gave her the strength to keep moving forward. She could feel the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on her, but Adam made it seem possible. He made it feel like maybe, just maybe, she had a future outside of the constraints of tradition. Serafina turned to look out the window again, her gaze drifting toward the stars. Do you ever wonder, Adam, she said softly, if we're making the right choice? The Zoran Empire is ancient. It's the only world I've ever known. And now I'm asking it to change for me. Adam stepped beside her, his presence comforting, strong. Change isn't easy. But you're not asking for it for yourself alone. You're asking for the entire empire. What you're doing will inspire others, Serafina. There are people out there who want something different. You're showing them that they don't have to be trapped by the past. Serafina turned to him, meeting his gaze. And what about you? What does Earth think about all this? About me? Adam paused, his expression thoughtful. My people. They might not understand. They might question why I've thrown in my lot with someone who isn't even from my world. But that doesn't matter. I came here because I believe in you, Serafina. I believe in this. Her heart swelled with emotion. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for a future that could change the course of her empire, her people, and even the galaxy. She wasn't alone in this fight. Adam had chosen her. Together, they could stand against the empire, against the traditions that held them both captive. Together, they could create something new. But it wouldn't be easy. The Zoran Empire would not simply roll over and accept this new alliance. They would resist. They would try to destroy what Adam and Serafina had begun. But no matter the cost, Serafina was ready. She had already lost so much of her life to fear and doubt. It was time to live for something greater. We need to act quickly, Serafina said, her voice determined. The Council will not give up. We'll need allies, people who believe in this cause, people who see what we see. Adam nodded. I'll help you find them. I know Earth's allies have been waiting for a chance to break free from the old ways. Maybe now is the time. Together, they began to plan. The rebellion would not come easily, but it would come. It would be born from their alliance, from their defiance of a broken system. As they stood there, side by side, Serafina realized that their fight had only just begun. The betrayal. The days after their meeting were tense, filled with quiet planning and hushed conversations. Serafina and Captain Adam Stone had begun to gather support, speaking to the few trusted allies they had within the Empire. It was slow work. The Zoran Empire, with its ancient traditions and deeply entrenched social hierarchies, did not bend easily. But as word spread about the human soldier's bold stance for the princess, cracks began to appear in the Empire's facade. Still, not everyone was on their side. Even within their small circle, there were those who had been loyal to the Empire for their entire lives. Old loyalties ran deep, and not everyone saw the value in change. Among these doubters was someone Adam had trusted, Commander Jorik, his second-in-command. Serafina had met Jorik only once, but she had been struck by the warmth in his eyes and the quiet strength in his presence. He was one of the few high-ranking officers who had treated her with respect when she had been nothing more than the Empire's forgotten princess. But Serafina knew better than anyone that appearances could be deceiving. Adam had warned her. He had sensed something off about Jorik for weeks, though he hadn't been able to place his finger on it. And now, as they sat in the war room, going over their plans for the next stage of their rebellion, Serafina felt a sudden, sharp tension in the air. She could feel it in her bones, that something was coming, something they hadn't anticipated. Adam leaned over the table, his fingers tracing the map of the Empire, plotting out their next move. We'll need to secure the border territories. If we can cut off the Empire's supply lines, we'll be able to cripple their forces long enough to make our stand. Serafina nodded, her mind racing with the weight of their decision. They had no allies left within the Empire, no one except for a few disillusioned soldiers and civilians who were tired of living under the Empire's oppressive rule. It was risky, but they didn't have a choice. But as Adam spoke, Serafina noticed a shadow moving at the door. It was Jorik. His tall form filled the doorway, but there was something different about the way he looked at them now. There was no warmth in his eyes, only cold calculation. Captain Stone, Jorik said, his voice steady, but the words seemed to hang in the air like a warning. Princess Serafina. I need to speak with you both. Adam looked up, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. What is it, Jorik? Jorik stepped into the room, his gaze never leaving Serafina. I've been following your plans, Captain. I know what you're trying to do. And I'm afraid I can't allow it to continue. Seraphina's stomach dropped. She had hoped she was wrong. She had hoped the unease she felt around Jorik was nothing more than her own paranoia. But now, hearing his words, she knew that her instincts had been right. Adam stood tall, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at his side. "What are you talking about, Jorik?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. Jorik's lips curled into a thin smile, but it wasn't a friendly one. "You've made a mistake, Captain. A big one. You thought you could just walk into the heart of the Empire and tear it down. But you've underestimated the power of the Council. And you've underestimated me." Before Adam could respond, Jorik turned sharply, and the sound of a gunshot rang out. Seraphina gasped as the door to the room burst open, and soldiers flooded in, Zoran soldiers, all of them loyal to the Council. They were too many, too fast, and the ambush was too well coordinated. In that moment, Seraphina's heart raced with panic. Jorik had betrayed them. The one person Adam had trusted had turned against them, selling them out to the Council. But the betrayal went deeper than she had imagined. Jorik wasn't just a traitor, he had been working with the Council all along. As the soldiers closed in, Adam sprang into action. He pulled Seraphina to the side, pushing her behind the nearest pillar for cover. "Get to safety," he shouted, his voice urgent. "I'll hold them off." But Seraphina knew better. She wasn't some helpless princess waiting to be rescued. She was done hiding in the shadows. Her future was in her hands now, and she wouldn't let this betrayal stop her. With a fierce determination, Seraphina pulled herself up from behind the pillar and grabbed the nearest weapon she could find. It was a small blaster, but it was enough. She aimed it at the soldiers advancing toward them and fired. The shot rang out, sending one of the soldiers tumbling to the ground, but the others were quick to retaliate. The room exploded into chaos, the air thick with the sound of gunfire and shouting. Seraphina fought alongside Adam, her heart pounding, her mind focused on survival. Jorik watched from the doorway, his eyes cold and calculating. "You should have known better, princess," he sneered. "The Zoran Empire is not a place for weakness." Adam moved quickly, using the chaos to take down the soldiers one by one. But the numbers were against them. For every soldier he knocked down, two more seemed to take their place. And through it all, Jorik stood back, watching, his expression unreadable. But Seraphina refused to give up. She wasn't going to let Jorik, or the Empire, decide her fate. She fired again, this time hitting a vital control panel near the door. Sparks flew, and the room plunged into darkness, giving Adam and Seraphina a moment to escape. "Come on!" Adam shouted, grabbing her hand. "We need to move, now." They sprinted through the corridors, the sounds of chaos still echoing behind them. But Seraphina knew this was just the beginning. The betrayal had shattered any hope they had of an easy victory. Now, they were truly on their own. The power of love and legacy. The sun had barely risen over the Zoran Empire, but Seraphina felt the weight of the world pressing against her. She and Adam had escaped the ambush, but not without consequences. Their flight from the palace had been anything but easy. The Empire was in chaos, and the Council was no longer the only force they had to fear. Jorik's betrayal had shattered their plans, leaving them with fewer allies and more enemies than they had ever imagined. But despite the uncertainty of their future, Seraphina felt something stirring within her. A spark, long buried beneath the weight of her doubts, began to grow into a fire of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for her survival anymore, she was fighting for something bigger, for the Empire itself, for the future of her people, and for a legacy that would rise from the ashes of betrayal. The night had been long, and as the first rays of sunlight began to break through the clouds, Seraphina stood at the edge of a cliff, gazing out over the vast landscape that stretched before her. The beauty of it almost took her breath away, but the silence of the world around her was a stark reminder of what had been lost. Adam stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. The weight of the rebellion was heavy on both their hearts, but there was a quiet understanding between them. They had been through so much together, fighting against the Empire, surviving betrayals, and now, leading a rebellion that would change the galaxy forever. "We can't stop now," Seraphina said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "The Empire may be broken, but it doesn't have to stay that way. There are still those who believe in change. We have to give them a reason to hope." Adam nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "The Council won't let up easily, but they can't stop what's already begun. People will follow us, Seraphina. They will see the truth of what we're trying to build. We don't need to fight them with force alone. We can inspire them, show them that a new future is possible." Seraphina turned to face him, her heart swelling with gratitude. Adam wasn't just her protector, he was her partner in every sense. He had believed in her when no one else had, and now he was helping her to believe in herself. Together, they were more than just a princess and a soldier. They were the hope that the Empire had been waiting for. The rebellion was starting to take shape, but it was far from easy. They had to gather their forces, find allies who were willing to risk everything for a future they couldn't yet see. The Council had tightened its grip on the Empire, and Jorik's influence stretched farther than they had realized. But as they traveled across the galaxy, speaking to those who had been oppressed by the Empire, Seraphina realized something important. The Empire was built on fear, but it was also built on the dreams of its people. And those dreams could be awakened. One evening, as they camped under the stars, a group of former Zoran soldiers approached them, their faces weathered and tired from years of war. They were led by a woman who introduced herself as Captain Valira, a former officer who had once served the Empire with pride but had left after seeing the corruption firsthand. "We heard your message," Captain Valira said, her voice strong despite the weariness in her eyes. "We've seen what the Empire has become. We want to fight with you. We want to rebuild, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who's suffered under their rule." Seraphina's heart leaped with hope. This was the turning point she had been waiting for, the moment when people started to believe in the change she had always dreamed of. The rebellion wasn't just about overthrowing the Council anymore. It was about creating a new empire, one that valued every voice, every person, no matter their bloodline or their past. "We'll do whatever it takes," Captain Valira added. "This isn't just your fight anymore, Princess. It's ours, too." Seraphina looked at Adam, her heart full of emotion. They had come so far, and now, they had the support they needed. It was still uncertain, still dangerous, but for the first time, Seraphina believed that victory was possible. Together, they could rewrite the future of the Zoran Empire. The battle ahead. The rebellion was no longer a small, scattered resistance. It had become a movement. People from all corners of the Empire, soldiers, civilians, traitors, even former royalty, came together under Seraphina's banner. They fought for the promise of a better world, one where people were valued not for what they could give, but for who they were. As they moved toward the final confrontation with the Council, Seraphina stood before her growing army, her voice echoing through the crowd. "This isn't just about the throne," she said. "This is about legacy. It's about showing the galaxy that love, not power, is what truly holds us together. We will fight for a future where every person has a chance to be who they are, without fear of judgment or rejection." The soldiers cheered, their voices rising in unison. The Zoran Empire, for all its strength, had never known a leader like Seraphina, someone who ruled not with an iron fist, but with love and compassion. Seraphina turned to Adam, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We've come so far. No matter what happens, we've already made a difference." Adam smiled, his eyes softening. "We've only just begun." Legacy of love. The final battle was fierce, but it was the message of hope, unity, and love that ultimately won the day. The Council, unable to hold on to the power that had corrupted them for so long, was overthrown. The Empire was broken, but it was no longer a place of oppression and fear. Under Seraphina's leadership, the Zoran Empire would rise again, not as an empire of bloodlines, but as an empire of dreams. And Seraphina, once the princess who had been rejected, stood as a queen who had won the hearts of her people. Her legacy wasn't built on her ability to bear children or fulfill royal duties, it was built on the power of love and the courage to stand up for what was right. As Seraphina and Adam stood side by side, looking out at the world they had changed, they knew that the story of the infertile alien princess and the human soldier was just the beginning. Together, they had shown the galaxy that even the most impossible love could create a legacy that would endure for generations to come.